Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. Each week, we meet here in VR to discuss the next generation of personal computing. My name is Ian Hamilton. I'm in Arkansas, joined by Kyle in Ohio. VR brings us together into this broadcast studio where we've got cameras, a TV, and tablets for notes and comments. We syndicate VR Download out to all podcast platforms and encourage our audience to become Upload VR members. This week, we're sponsored by Veil VR, which just released an early access on Steam. It's a VR first-person shooter with immersive physics, full-body animations and skins, climb, vault, ride zip lines, and defy gravity on jump pads to achieve victory in this 5v5 competitive shooter. I also want to say thank you to our Upload VR YouTube members. We've got John Westra, Dunadim, Smash Reality, Robert Quinones, 360 Pickleball, Rick Tet, Sexy Bicycle, Skiva, Andrew, Handy, Pranama, Clay, ACP Plays, Marcellus, Ryan, Mark, Joseph, Gravity, Joe, Quentin, King Jello, Homeglen, The Lucky Dogs Band, Aaron, Nick, Captain Clutch, Lazarus, James, Anthony Mann, and Andrew. Thank you all so much for your support. And we're going to cover just a free-flowing conversation today over the best VR of 2022, as well as looking back at 10 years with Oculus. Kyle and I have been at this for quite a long time, and it's kind of getting to me, Kyle, a little bit, that it's been a decade of VR now, and I think there's a lot of new people who have come into VR since then, a lot of people who have been around even longer than that decade. I know there's people that have been waiting for the 90s, since the 90s, for VR to take off. Kyle, why don't you give us a sense of where you're at mentally? What do you think? How are you thinking about VR these days?
Ooh, mentally. I don't know if you want me to start there. I'll tell you one thing's for sure. My virtual back really hurts. Oh, it feels so old. I feel old, that we've been doing this as long as we have been. By the way, hi everyone. It's not normal for you guys to see me not be in the host seat with Ian. Normally it's either Ian and Heaney or me and Heaney, but I'm Heaney today, I guess. Yeah, so it's really cool. It's really great to be here in VR using the Oculus Quest Pro headset, which is one of many that I've owned that we'll go through.
Do you have the microphone guards on there, or are we going to hear you puffing throughout the whole show?
I do not have. So I will try to keep my P's and Q's straight. No, I don't think it's that bad. Actually, I think there's been an update. I don't know. I've noticed that I've done a few recordings, and I don't know if it's as bad. So y'all will have to tell me. Y'all will have to let me know if I'm. So now I'm back in Ohio. I'm allowed to say y'all again.
Yeah, I saw people asking where David Heaney is. So Heaney is on vacation. David is on vacation. I got to get practiced. People were making fun of me for saying last time that I was going to try to say David Heaney, but I ended up saying Heaney through the whole show anyways. Right. Yeah, yes. He's on vacation. We've got Henry on vacation for one more day. Harry is on vacation. I would like to be on vacation. My mind is on vacation a little bit. It's the season where you show VR to others in real life, really, right now, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, Kyle? No, it is. Yeah, I've showed VR to several folks over the course of the last week or so, and I mean it's our duty, not as evangelists, but just as tech geeks who like to share all the fun tech with everybody. I wonder how long before I can put a watch on my avatar.
Do you get the question still from family? Do you work for Meta? Do you get that?
So I had family come in from Colorado, and the question's always like, well, I see them maybe once every couple years, and they come in, they're like, oh, so you work for Oculus? And I'm like, I don't know where to begin with that question.
It's a rough one. No, I don't. Yeah. I don't make that money. I don't make that crazy.
Yeah.
That crazy Facebook money.
Ain't got that meta cheddar. Yeah.
Anthony's saying, get the pop filter. So you're officially on notice, Kyle, that you have to get the pop filter before you rejoin. That's why I took the host seat away from him. That's my reasoning.
Interesting thing though. So I had in the last episode, and I'll try to speak lower and try not to use a lot of certain consonants. Uh, I had a piece of tape over my microphones during the last episode that I did, and it seemed to be okay, but not great. When I went into Horizon Worlds later that day, don't ask why, I was told that nobody could hear me, and I assumed that it was because of the microphone doodad that I had put on there, and so I took it off, and then they're like, "Yeah, I can hear you just fine now." So I'm not really sure what happened there. But yeah, no, I'll get I'll put a mustache on my Pro. I promise.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm seeing creative saying I never owned Oculus or Quest. I just owned Pico 4. That's a new VR person coming in this year. That's millions. We're gonna have millions and millions of new people getting VR headsets in the next 6 months to 2 years. Just a whole new generation of VR getting VR for the first time. And the fact that you're starting with Pico 4 kind of underscores the changing of the guard, the changing of the time, right? For the last few years, it has been a Quest heavy show. There have been a couple amazing PSVR games, couple amazing PC VR games, but by and large, for the last couple of years, if you released a VR game, you kind of had to hit Quest first in order to make the most amount of money, and that is slowly changing. Obviously, we can see your comments here. So if you have any basic comments about VR, any questions about VR, we want to help. Our commenters are very supportive. We love the discussion that we have every week in VR. We will ban people if they get a little too rowdy, I suppose. Um, but luckily, that doesn't happen too often. Kyle, I was looking through your 10 images, your history of VR images here, looking through the years. I set the image, I don't think I have it, darn it, in my folder here, of my first Oculus demo back in 2012. I went and got the Brendan Uribe duct tape demo. I was going through
Right.
my audio files, and I still have my audio files floating around from that very first discussion. And you can hear Brendan Uribe describe VR. You can hear Palmer Luckey describe where he was back then. And I came away from that first demo and wrote this piece for the front of the Orange County Register's business section. And I think to the people at Oculus, it was one of the first times that I would have been mainstream journalist at the time, took them seriously. So a mainstream publication wrote a big article taking what Oculus was doing seriously. And that article, that business section, was on the front of their sort of lobby for years there in the first office in Orange County. It was always a little weird. And then yeah, from that demo onward, I kept coming back to my editors, trying to come up with new stories to write about VR all the time, because I became convinced pretty quickly there that it was certainly gonna take off for real. Let's see, where's your DK1 demo? Is this DK1 here? Yeah. So is this you in DK1, Kyle?
So yeah, Ian said prior to us doing this episode, he says, "Go find pictures of you in all the different headsets that you've owned," and I've owned them all. Okay, not all, but I mean, I've owned all of the Oculus headsets and different iterations. What you see here is, well, this is pretty crazy. I have an Oculus DK1. This is the development kit, the first development kit. And for those of you who do not know, there's only 3 degrees of freedom. It's a 3 DOF headset. So you had yaw, pitch, and roll, but you didn't have any positional tracking. And so, do you recognize this piece of equipment that I have strapped to myself? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, is that one of the Hydras?
That is the Razer Hydra, which is it had a little green magnetic base, a ball. It wasn't magnetic. It had like some sort of, the tracking was like circular. So there was some issues with it, but essentially, yeah. So one of these, the one controller was for positional tracking, and then the other one was a controller. I Gosh, I really wish I could remember the name of the game that I was playing. It was built in Unreal, and oh man, oh, it
My
takes me back.
my first demo that I can remember doing with this setup was this Scared in the Forest one. I wish I could remember his name too. Maybe someone in our comments will.
Alone in
Uh,
the Rift.
oh, it was so you're walking into an old cabin, and at some random moment when you're in the cabin or outside, a scary screaming woman ghost will yell at you. And I remember putting video out of me screaming, my friends screaming, and they thought we faked it because it was that far into the sort of like everyone had seen these screaming videos and people were already faking them. But I did certainly, I'm sweating. Sweat is dripping down my forehead because I'm just that stressed out. And those were my biggest. Those were very impactful moments of realizing, well, I'm reacting to this differently than if I had just watched a really scary movie on the TV.
I have to point out that Andrew Tech here says Kyle did wireless VR before anyone else. Thank you for being such a long-term fan, because those of you who remember my old YouTube videos, which I mean they're all still up out there in the cosmos for posterity. Now, I mean it's just there's no value to those videos as tutorials now, just pure entertainment. But yeah, the I did wireless VR using a DK1. Actually, I had this wireless using several pieces of equipment. But yes, and hello to Artful as well. Had a wonderful holiday, and I am still bespectacled. So there you go.
Some wonderful quote comments already here. Yeah,
Yeah,
Andrew saying
right.
Merry Christmas, Happy New
Hmm.
Year. Greg saying VR has to be in your soul. It's not guaranteed that everyone will dig it. I think that's true. Although I think that might change over time. I think VR will win over more of the people who don't get it with each successive generation. That's one of the things that I've picked up on, at least among developers, where a developer might have gone and tried this out and said, nah, I'm not getting it. Then they got a full room scale with both hand controllers, and it was over the line in terms of capabilities, and they're like, oh, maybe I could actually build for this. And they did get won over time. Danny's saying we need Pico 4 in Australia. And um, Andrew asking, here's a question nobody asks. If you were going to receive a hand-me-down VR headset, which one would you want? And I saw someone
Ooh,
else already suggesting this, that they're going to hand down their Quest 2 as soon as Quest 3 is out. And that would be my pick at this point in
yeah,
time. If you're going to get a
yeah.
hand-me-down, get a Quest 2 if you can, get a Quest 1 if you cannot. There's still plenty of games that work on the Quest 1, but if you can somehow get a hand-me-down Quest 2, you're going to be up and running with all the latest
Now,
games.
I don't personally go to GameStop very often, but I would wonder how long it's going to take before Quests and Quest 2s show up. And I would expect somebody in the comments to go, oh, I already saw one. Oh. PlayStation VR, I've seen those at GameStop, but I have not seen a Quest 1 or 2. But I wonder what the I guess I'm wondering what the economy for that is. Like, what is the economy for used headsets?
It's
Is there
it's
is there
strong.
anybody out there? Is it?
It's
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
it's remarkable. I sold a couple using Facebook Marketplace, and they were getting picked up really fast. And it was amazing how horrible Facebook Marketplace is as like a product, because I had to swat away what half of my inquiries were from scammers trying to auto send me money and then have me send them money back, using that uh old thing to try to get you out of your money because the banks aren't catching up to your
Mm-hmm.
transactions quickly enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminding me it reminded me of how easy it is to sell an iPhone or an iPad, because in for some parts of its lifespan, the iPhone was like as good as cash for taking a product to another country. So you could take an iPhone from the United States to a country where it isn't officially sold yet. And it was like you were taking cash from one country to another because you could that so reliably sell it in the new country and get this wad of cash for this product you brought over. It feels like Quest is in that same kind of high demand product category. Kyle, do you remember how much this cost? How much was this dev kit?
Did I pay $300 for that, I believe?
That's what I recall the price being, and it blows my mind that we went to 600-700 for a kit, up to 1,000 if you want room scale with all the additional trackers, and then all the way back down a decade later down to the $300 realm for the Quest 2, and then obviously back up to 400 when they did their little price increase. But I really wonder whether we'll see Quest 3 back at $300 next year. It's a real
Yeah,
question there
I
of
don't
how
know.
low they're
Yeah,
gonna
the
subsidize
like I
it.
said, the economy for this is it's interesting. I'm not really sure where the value sits. Does it rely on, obviously, if you're going to get an iPhone, since you use that as an example, the iPhone itself, will it, if it scratches on the screen, does it have as much value? If there's scratches on the lenses of one of these guys, um, I don't know. I'd be curious to see. Are we going to see websites spring up that solely function to buy and sell used VR headsets? Like I want there to be an economy for this. I mean, as a small anecdote here, since it's still the holidays, I went to a Christmas party. All my cousins all have children now, and they're all in their yeah, early to mid teens, and a couple of them are sitting around the couch, and they're all talking about what game they want to play. What's the next game? They've done they've played themselves plenty of Arizona Sunshine, and they've done some Pavlov. They were all talking about wanting to get Phasmophobia, and I'm like, okay. I mean, these are teenagers sitting around at Christmas having conversations about what next game they're going to play. All of them, and there's a lot of hope for the future of VR. I really do think there is.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange year overall. We had the Christmas bump hit, all the devs noticing and putting out those charts that just show, a flat line, and then all of a sudden Christmas, boom, their
Yeah.
sales go through the roof. But at the same time, it's not, it wasn't the same push necessarily for PC VR. The Quest itself is an aging system, right? So people know Quest 3. A lot of people know Quest 3 is coming, and Quest Pro obviously got like the brunt of the marketing and product push this year from Meta. So it's even though you're going to have a rush around Christmas, you're also not seeing the same kind of push on software side. We got our review of Walking Dead Saints and Sinners out right before Christmas, and that as an example there, that was supposed to be a monster, major, huge Christmas period release, and they they more or less put that game out there without properly quality assurance testing, or at least not bug fixing the testing bugs that were probably found during the quality assurance testing phase. Uh, 2 weeks passed from that early December release. They put out a big patch to fix a lot of those bugs. Zombies are disappearing on people. You could still hear them. The game was crashing on our reviewer so that they had to replay giant sections of the game. Those are really, really terrible bugs to have in VR, and there's still some there. We'll revisit the game early next year. But that game came out for Quest only with all of those bugs, and then the PC and PSVR 2 versions of that game are pushed out to next year, so there's plenty of time for them to sort of get another push around launch. But just kind of weird because this period was so big last year between the Questies Day that they promoted over at Meta, as well as just the low price of the headset, as well as all the games hitting, that they're all pushed all at the same time. And then this year, it just kind of thudded a little bit in comparison because one of the big games had so many bugs. We will revisit that early next year. And Kyle, I was just spending a lot of time. I've talked about this internally a lot, but I want to get into our best of VR. We already had a question there asking for us to explain why we picked What the Bat. We'll explain that shortly. Um, but yeah, I'm getting more comfortable after going through all this, Kyle, with my concept of how we want to recognize some of the best things in VR because I really did notice the shift this year in VR from yes, there's great games, yes, there's a lot of great free content, but somewhere in between those two sort of categories of things, there's just great places to spend your time in VR. And if you go down the major activities that you enjoy in the real world, from playing mini golf to watching movies, there are incredible versions of those activities in VR. And it's very easy to recommend those on an ongoing basis. Hello, Skiva.
Oh, hey, Skiva's here. All right, in the house. When we were talking the other day, Ian, about the best of, and I kind of waffled a bit about what is the appropriate breakdown, because you can get super granular. This is me doing my very best Eric Cartman from South Park in a DK2. That was me doing that. No, what is the best categories? Like you mentioned golf, you mentioned places, movies. There's like 3 or 4 different games for almost every category of, this, that, or the other. And you could have a zombie game category if you want. Shooting zombies is literally a category.
You could have 5 different zombie categories if
Oh
you really
yeah.
wanted, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
you could have 5 different flight categories. And flight was the one that really irked me or bothered me. I'm thinking about a lot right now. If you want to go and have a great flight experience in VR, there are reasonably 5 or 6 amazing options. The question is, what kind of a flight experience do you want? Do you want aerial combat? Do you want a realistic simulation? Do you want the flight experience to match what you actually get in a physical aircraft as
Right.
much as you possibly can? Do you want to
Do you want it to
battle?
be more arcadey? Do you want
Yeah,
it to be more, how much, control do you
space
want to have? Yeah.
space flight versus air flight, like they're completely different categories, right? Like,
Yeah.
and whether you want to do bombing runs on land locations or whether you're just hiding around asteroids, right? You could have 5 different categories for space flight. I was just thinking of like
Yeah.
Elite Dangerous versus No Man's Sky, right? They're both incredible experiences in their own right, but in completely different ways. You're not going to go like you're going to go into Elite Dangerous for a completely different reason than you're going to go into No Man's Sky. And then the same is true for Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Like, you're serving 3 entirely different audiences with the same general premise there. And we have to find ways to make sure we recognize that range of work.
See, there's such a challenge though, because No Man's Sky really kind of botches up the whole concept of categories. Because if you want to consider it, if you want to consider No Man's Sky is a great video game on a 2D screen. It's a fantastic experience when you put a headset on and you play, especially if you got a really beefy computer and it can actually handle all the graphics and you turn everything up to 11 or 12. But, considering a game to be a place, the universe that you go into to be able to experience what No Man's Sky can offer is different than saying the universe that you go into to, say, do flight sims. Uh, there's so many gray areas that I'm not really like. If I go into like virtual desktop to go stream something very, just go into the theater or big screen or something like that, I can turn everything off and just see the movie. I'm in a completely black void, and all I am doing is watching the movie. Am I actually somewhere? Am I in a place? Or am I just consuming whatever is the movie the place I'm going to, or is the void the place I'm going? You know what I mean? It's kind of
Oh my
hard to.
gosh, you're doing the hardcore what is VR questions.
I
Yeah, no, I
know.
get it. No, so a couple things there. I I think it's worth recognizing big screen and virtual desktop both as incredible things in their own way. So big screen, I'm going to argue, is the best virtual movie theater, period. It is as close as you can get to the theatrical going to the theater experience. You can have friends sitting on either side of you. You can have strangers sitting all around you, just like you have in a real theater, and everyone can be muted. And then you're watching some random thing up on the screen. I was joking about this. I went into a random room in big screen to test it out, and Violent Night was playing. That's the movie with the guy from Stranger Things as Santa Claus. And I put this scene on, and it's just a random scene from the movie where he just decimates an entire special operations team with a candy cane. Like he has a sharpened candy cane and is just stabbing people with it and doing all sorts of John Wicky things with that candy cane. And I'm just sitting there in this beautiful, well-lit theater with a bunch of randos. Nobody's saying anything. At some point, someone pops up and says, "What's the name of this movie?" And a couple people turn their mics on real quick and say it's Violent Night, and we go back to watching it. That's the best theater experience. I'm going to argue that virtual desktop is a personal display viewer. It's a personal, private display viewer, and it doesn't replicate the theater experience. Yes, you can go sit in a theater inside of virtual desktop, but what that does is provide you a personal display for traditional games. You can even get your VR games streamed from a PC, as well as all your movies that are on your PC you can get streamed to you personally. It's like having a portable display with you at all times. Now, you can go into environments in either of those apps, and there are some great ones in either of them. I was looking through them today. With big screen, you've got I love their stadium seating cinema. They've got this wonderful stadium, like giant IMAX type cinema where each row is lower in front of you. You've got no one blocking you, but you can still see other people down there. And then this giant screen. You've got the reflections on the seats in front of you. It just looks gorgeous. And then over in virtual desktop, you've got this sort of personal viewer room. It's like a personal theater. You're centered in the room. The lights are doing their thing, but the picture is just fantastic and crisp. Um, yes, so it the environments there are backdrops for the overall experience. Yes, the environments matter, but the overall experience, when you take those things the way I've laid them out there, those are the best experiences for two different purposes in VR. You can have a theater experience with big screen. You can have a private display with virtual desktop. I want to say thank you to Anthony for the donation with Red Matter 2 pushing mobile chips to its limits and making it look easy. I'd love a GDC presentation from the devs. It really made 2022 special. I think now is probably a good time to go with to discuss our What the Bat selection for Game of the Year, specifically in relation to Red Matter 2. Did you
Let
try
me.
Red Matter 2, Kyle?
Red Matter 2, I did not. I watched a lot of other people play. And, there's just certain genres of games and things that, appeal to certain people. And I respect that. And, everybody's got their own taste of games. But I want to address the What the Bat thing right off the bat. Yeah, sorry. That was actually unintended, but totally works. Ian texted me, or I think it was Slack, and you say, hey, I think we're going with What the Bat as our big winner. And I had seen it, but I hadn't played it. And so I felt an obligation. All right, if this is really what we're going to do, I'm going to jump in here and play this. Downloaded What the Bat, went out in my living room, got a big open area, and I played it for 5 minutes and went, oh, no, I want to keep playing. And I played it more, and I played it more, and I played it more, and I'm giggling, and I'm enjoying myself, and I'm not getting frustrated, and I immediately wanted my kids to play. Like, I immediately wanted my kids to come and play this game. I get it. I absolutely get it. And you know what? It's not, I always thought it was stupid that every person I knew was playing Candy Crush. I didn't see the value in that game, but like billions and billions of people playing Candy Crush. I never understood the game. What the Bat, I think, is one of those types of games where if you get it, you love it, and if you don't get it, you hate it. Well, we get it. We get it, and we love it, and so there you go.
So this goes kind of to the core of why we're trying to evolve the way we recognize outstanding content in VR, right? We recognized Vertical Robot, the developers of Red Matter 2. We recognized them as best developers of the year. And the reason we did that, the logic, you go and read the post, they launched that on PC, Quest Pro, and Pico, right? And on each of those platforms, they did different things. So on Pico, they increased performance specifically for Pico headsets. On Quest Pro, they used the foveated rendering. On Quest 2, they did just an amazing job with the visuals of Red Matter 2 overall. Just incredible work. And then, of course, it's on PC as well. And we wanted to recognize that work, and completely in agreement with our comments here that I would love to see an in-depth breakdown. They've already done it to a certain extent across their own channels, but I would love to see like a GDC post-mortem going to the graphics there and how they were able to accomplish that. I'm expecting more from them. I went into Red Matter 2 and I was bored within 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And I hate saying that because there's plenty of people out there that are going to go out and play Red Matter 2 to completion, and love it. I just, it got old. I didn't like the setup of the puzzles or how to find your way around. Yeah, it's gorgeous to take in. It's absolutely astoundingly beautiful how amazing that environment is. But I just got bored fast. There is this thing that happens with VR headsets and with VR games in general. It's your time to wishing you were somewhere else. And it hits in a lot of games very, very quickly. And Red Matter was one of them where it didn't work. What the Bat is the opposite. You described What the Bat exactly as it hit me. Pistol Whip is the one before that hit me in the same sort of way. You give it 5 minutes and you're hooked, and it really clicks. And
Well, here,
some games are like that.
So let me interrupt here because I think the challenge for people who are going to go, the Upload guys are idiots for picking What the Bat, and why wouldn't they pick something else? You have to understand that it's all about target audience. Ian was bored with Red Matter too. And I didn't even bother playing it because I had seen other people play it enough that I got the gist of what was happening, which you can fault me for. I'll go play it immediately after we're done with this, I promise, okay? But target audience, if you're a reader, if you're a frequent reader or consumer of our content, we don't only have a target audience of extreme high-end gamers. We don't only cater to developers. We don't only cater to PC VR. We don't only cater to... If you want a channel that only talks nicely about PSVR content, there's plenty of them out there. That's great. If you want something that's a lot more well-rounded, something that you can send grandma and little Billy to at the same time, you send them to Upload, because they're here in the cosmos, we want everyone to appreciate our content and find it helpful. There's plenty of stuff that's going to target only to that small niche group of people. It's like developers out there who are building PC VR right now. You know who your target audience is. You know that there's going to be people going, how come this isn't on Quest? Well, it's not on Quest because Quest isn't going to give you the power that you need to make this game do what the developer wants it to do. but the developer knows that their target audience is a little bit smaller than what you'd get if it was on mobile VR. So that's my little spiel about, target audiences is why we choose what we choose. But I mean, I knew people who were 18 and 80 who played Candy Crush. I feel like the same thing is going to happen with What the Bat and Red Matter 2. There's a specific target audience of people who like that type of game. I'm a huge fan of No Man's Sky, both on a flat screen and on a VR headset. I like RTSs. I don't like certain other things. I mean, there are games out there that if I said I didn't like it, people would be like, oh no, you can't say you don't like that game. But I don't, and that's okay because everybody plays what they want to play. But as reviewers, we're trying to give the most well-rounded answers, not just for extreme gaming, because we could do a whole nother category of just that. I mean, we're giving credit where credit's due. If a developer does a good job, you're a great developer. In terms of gameplay, that's a different story. Who's going to actually appreciate your game versus how well you built it. I've seen some really well built games that I didn't enjoy. Doesn't make it a bad game. It's just not for me.
Yeah, so Skiva making this comment here, new VR users are going to come to who they know as the absolute authority on VR. They're going to see uploads say What the Bat is the best VR game. They'll probably think VR isn't there yet. I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback, but I'm going to argue the opposite is probably the case, that people are going to be giggling within the first 5 minutes of playing that game, and it's going to be a more universal reaction than people having the reaction you're suggesting there, Skiva. Even though, point taken, I get it, and you might be right. I'm going to argue. I'm going to argue the other way.
I have to throw this in there too, because Skiva, I totally appreciate that concept. There's a lot of people who think that developers who make simple games that don't have high-end graphics are going to say, oh, VR can't handle what's necessary for a good game. I understand that logic. I don't agree with it, but I understand why so many people are saying that and think that. But let's picture the other side of the spectrum, where a 38-year-old mother calls me and says my 14-year-old son wants a VR headset, and all I'm seeing are that it's shooters, and I don't want my child playing shooters, and then going to school and talking about shooting. There's a completely different group of people out there who want to buy their kids video games that they can play Vacation Simulator, or they can play a Job Simulator, or they can do flight sims, and they can do art things and draw. They can, pet the little aliens and watch movies and interact with friends and build stuff and then play games like What the Bat. If all we do is say this is the best zombie shooter that you're going to get, I mean, come on. You have to show that there are other things out there that are going to work and be available. It's controversial. I know. It's
all
hard.
Right. So you got to ask what our ideal audience is, right? Who do we have in mind as our readers, as our audience when we make these selections? A couple things to keep in mind. Our reviews are written by a single person. So if you see a byline on a review, it's written by that person. It's their opinion, and their opinion can differ from yours in serious ways. With our best of lists and those types of things, we do it collectively. We have discussion more, going back and forth, trying to pick and handle the different things that are weighing on us in our mindset. And one of the things that I got to throw out there, if you have this picture in your mind of who the ideal audience is for VR, and it's, you start picturing this person who is a hardcore shooter gamer. They go out and play shooter games. Call of Duty is their, bread and butter. They play Call of Duty all the time, and they want to experience VR. Right. I'm probably going to direct that person to Bone Lab, right? I'm gonna say, that's for that audience member, for that person, go check out Bone Lab and see if you've got the iron stomach to make it through Bone Lab without getting sick. Um, but keep in mind, Bone Lab, its very first scene has you hang yourself, right? The very first thing you do in that game is you take a noose and put it around your neck. I spent a good 20 minutes avoiding putting that noose around my neck. Right? That's how stupid I was in the very first scene of Bone Lab. How many, how many of those people, the moms, the teenagers who aren't Call of Duty players, are just going to be turned off by that entire experience of like, that's not what they're going for. I'm not going to go through a mock suicide in my first few moments in VR. Like, that's just not me. Now, that's not to say that Stress Level Zero knows exactly what kind of audience it wants, and they were incredibly successful at building for that audience. And there's a ton of gamers in VR who want exactly what Bone Lab gave them. But is that the experience of the average Joe, Jill, who are going and getting a headset for the first time and have no idea what to do with this VR headset? No. The thing, yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
So there's I'm gonna give credit where credit's due here. Hold on. Let's see here. Who said it? Danny Blitz, I believe, said it. That something to the effect. Why am I not seeing the comment now? A lot of comments. That's good, guys. That's good. Anyway, it was essentially it said something to the effect of is that seeing pictures of what the bat is not going to get people into VR. I disagree. I'm sorry, I disagree. If I had to pick back when Beat Saber first came out, if somebody had told me this is going to be the game, this is going to be the game that's going to start it all and get people into VR, I would have laughed at you. Matter of fact, I think people did say that, and I did laugh at it. I would have never have picked a rhythm game with the most simplest of graphics to be the thing. Why? Just because there were sabers? Ooh, neat. I would have never have guessed that in a million years. Highly addictive game. A lot of people love that game. A lot of people like showing that they're playing that game. There's multiplayer for like almost no reason whatsoever. Who am I to say why this game brought people into VR? But it did. I mean, What the Bat has just as much of a chance of doing that as Red Matter 2 does. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know. Ian, let's before we go any further, let's hit our sponsor one more time.
This week's episode is sponsored by Veil VR. Veil VR was built from the ground up to support competitive integrity that includes standardizing player height and preventing place-based cheats. The developers want you to trust that every match will be competitive and fair. It's available now on Steam, and their next esports tournament starts in January, so get ready. You can find out more about that game in the Steam page, which is linked down in our description. I want to talk a little bit so let me run through what some of our other selections. We're ripping apart a couple particular decisions here with What the Bat, but I want to give an overview of our efforts to recognize new content that was impressive in various ways in 2022. So we said Demeo was the best updated VR game. They added a ton of new content to that board game experience in VR this year. Best new game, obviously, we gave What the Bat. Best developer, Vertical Robot, for their work with Red Matter 2. Best DLC, awarded to Jim Henson's Labyrinth course for Walkabout Mini Golf. Best new hardware, Pico 4, obviously competing there against Quest Pro, as well as some accessories. I was actually a big proponent of the controllers getting picked as...
See, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the Pico 4 because I've never tried it.
Well,
I have zero experience with that headset. I've never put that headset on my head, and it kills me. It kills me that I have not been able to.
Oh yeah, it's one of those ones
Yeah,
where I
that's
agree. I agree. I know I want to do it too, but I trust Heaney's take on it,
oh,
his
I do too.
analysis.
I trust David Heaney as well.
Yeah, so I mean his summation of it is better hardware than Quest 2 makes the Quest seem antiquated by comparison, the Quest 2 specifically, but the content library and software is not there to match the experience you're getting out of a Quest. And obviously a very succinct way of letting people know, yeah, you're getting great hardware in Pico 4, but you might be struggling a little bit. If you're planning to use a lot of PC content with your Pico 4, that is definitely a major reason to consider it. People in our comments saying that they've gotten it shipped to the United States, purchasing it elsewhere. We don't really have any guidance for people who want to do that because you're setting yourself up
I
for such a
actually,
difficult support situation if you do that.
yes, there is a very specific reshipper that will do that for you. And so I attempted to get a Pico 4 sent to me, and they shipped it to the wrong address. I won't say what service I used, but they shipped it to the billing address, which means our accountants ended up with a Pico 4, and I did not.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
yeah, so it's somewhere in the cosmos. I'm sure it'll get to me eventually, but a reshipped headset that now needs to be reshipped again. So, not thrilled about that one. I contacted their support line. They said, "Oops." So that's at your risk. We don't suggest that.
And then what else? We also awarded Among Us VR as best new multiplayer. And then the other thing that I'm doing, I'll be publishing later today. I just need to get the the featured image done for it. But I want to start going down this list of just best locations, best places to visit in VR for specific activities. We've done this in piecemeal over the years, Kyle. But it's time for us to start calling out some of these amazing locations. And uh, just as we awarded Jim Henson's Labyrinth for the best DLC to release in this year, I'm going to argue that mini golf course is the
Mm-hmm.
best mini golf course in all of virtual reality. So you've got mini golf courses you can go to via a website. You can just go to a WebXR URL and visit a mini golf course. You've got mini golf available in other games. People are recreating mini golf courses in VR Chat and I think Horizon Worlds as well. But all together, you've got theme, you've got physics. When you put it all together, I don't think anything else can match the incredible experience as a package you get out of the Walkabout Mini Golf Labyrinth course.
Some of my favorite places to go, and I'm biased toward this, is real VR fishing. Some of those landscapes and the
Yep.
experiences of fishing. I mean, I've had some extremely amazing conversations with folks. Well, Skiva and Alex, both of them upload correspondence. Uh, Ian and I have done shows from within real VR fishing. And I mean, there's just something I enjoy doing it in real life. And so the peaceful, tranquil, perfect amount of 3D, the realism, and then the ability to actually do the thing that I enjoy doing, which is fishing. I mean, you want to talk about places to go. I would say that game definitely holds two or three of my favorites.
Yeah, so that is on this initial list of the first 8 places that I've picked here, and we're going to expand this list out significantly as we go through it. But fishing, U.S. West Yosemite location,
Mm-hmm.
sitting there watching a bear, this giant cliff next to you, going up to the sky, birds circling overhead. Obviously, you can have multiplayer people around you. You can pull up music. All those things together makes an incredible fishing experience. And yeah, real VR fishing, US West locations. I was just looking there, and I think they're going to repackage the way they're doing some of their add-on holes or add-on fishing holes into like the core experience sometime next year. So I don't think you'll have to DLC buy some of those extra places. But yes, absolutely. Real VR fishing is there. Golf Plus. Golf Plus has Pebble Beach golf links. They've got the full course modeled after the famous the famous course out there in California, Pebble Beach, uh, butting up against the Pacific Ocean. You can golf through all those holes. And the developers over there, if you haven't paid attention to what they're doing, they've got a partnership with the PGA Tour to next year, as a tour is happening, as an actual tournament is happening with pros out on the course. They'll hit their balls, then in a VR headset, you can see a shot ball tracker show you where those balls went right after they're hit. And then you can go following around the players, the pro players, hitting the balls and seeing if you can do better in VR on the same course as the pros going around right behind them. The developers there are still figuring out how they're going to price that, package that for users. But when you
Hmm.
put those two things together of Pebble Beach Golf Course, this incredible physical golf course everyone knows, combined with the idea that they're actually teaming with the PGA Tour, you've got an incredible package there forming. So I'm going to argue, okay, you've got Pebble Beach Golf Links, this incredible full-size golf course. You've got Labyrinth. I saw someone commenting that the 20,000 Leagues mini golf course was their favorite. I thought it was really cool too. What set apart the Labyrinth course in my mind is there is a full actual maze to go get lost inside in the Labyrinth course. So not only can you go through the 18 holes, you can also just take a left and go off and get lost in their maze inside of the Labyrinth course. And I love the way that's laid out, as well as the crazy stairways level. Each of those scenes taken from a scene in the movie. Just a brilliant adaptation in my mind. And then you've got, like I said before, you've got your personal display viewer in virtual desktop. You've got your virtual movie theater over in big screen. And between all of those, you've got a lot of basic things from the real world covered with incredible versions of simulations of those experiences covered. And I think we're going to build out from there and really start to highlight those things because I don't know, like it's not a lot of those things were new. Like a lot of those things have been just there and slowly getting better over the last couple of years,
You know,
and
something
I
just
want to
just to
recognize it.
throw something out there. We have discussed. It's hard for us to talk about the most amazing places that you can go in VR and not recognize the fact that VR chat and Neos both have phenomenal people making amazing worlds to go and look at. And I guess at some point we might include Horizon Worlds in that as well. But we want to possibly add that type of category in the future here at Upload, where we actually are tackling what's amazing in some of these social VR experiences. I've seen some amazing stuff in Neos and in VR chat, and I feel like there's some credit needed there as well. And so, just generally speaking, it's pretty amazing to see some of that stuff. But we haven't really delved into that in terms of a category. But I think we might do that in the future.
User user generated worlds are a really tough one. That thing I described a few minutes ago. So I'm remembering a couple of the last few things on this first list that I'm recognizing. 11 table tennis is going to be recognized as the best table tennis. We've already done that in sort of our roundup of putting that head to head with another one. But we'll have a recommendation of which environment. I really like the chalet environment for 11 table tennis. Um, and then I'm also recognizing an experience called Skits and Giggles, and I'm calling it the best live show in VR. And the reason I want to mention Skits and Giggles is because I have attended maybe half a dozen to a dozen live VR theater experiences in VR. And by and large, I wanted out of them really fast. because of how bad they were in various respects. And I hate saying that, right? We try to raise up what we think is working and point more people to the things that we think are working as often as possible without tearing down the things that aren't working too much. It's easier to just focus our energy on saying, hey, this works. Let's try to do more of this thing. um, I've been to some just miserable live theater experiences in VR chat where like person is trying to make up stuff on the fly. It just doesn't work. Uh, they're even handing things from one person to another in a live theater. Like if you've got this basic interaction where you've got this item that you're holding and you're supposed to hand it to another actor, often that thing will fly off into the distance. In various experiences here, absolutely miserable when that happens. And I tried another one right before Christmas that it broke in every way imaginable. It was glorious how many ways this experience broke. So I went to a Christmas Carol showing in VR. This is put together by Agile Lens, a little startup that is trying to do cloud streaming. And it's done with actors using motion capture hardware in like one city, streaming to Quest and standalone headsets. And I was running on a Steam VR cloud PC that was streaming my experience to my Quest headset. And during my attempt to get this running, the developer actually logged into my cloud PC while I was inside Quest, and they were like debugging the cloud PC to figure out why I wasn't accessing the Christmas Carol storyline successfully, and they couldn't figure it out. Like I bugged, went through everything, but what was remarkable here, Kyle, is they had this experience streaming to a 2D flat screen. So with a simple URL, I could send the performance to my family and they could watch it in the other room on a live streamed just traditional view. I was in VR and I couldn't even see what they were seeing. While they were watching things on their TV, the actor changed costumes, like the character changed costumes. The camera moved around in weird ways. I just every possible way for this live performance to broke on us in different ways. But it was still mind-bogglingly cool to think that 5 years from now, that's what this experience showed me. We could have actors fully full body motion captured from their face movements to their leg movements, streamed over the internet to to viewers who could then view the experience live in VR. And A Christmas Carol is such a great example of this because annually, every year, everyone wants to see Christmas Carol come around Christmas time. And it was a cool idea to be able to have a version of this that you could experience in VR, a version of this you could see on the web, or a version you could see just streamed to your 2D window. And all of them are using the same core technologies. Um, Super long winded way of saying, I am so excited to see what they do in 2023, 2024 with this experience. But it was just hopelessly broken for me in my particular experience. I'm sure a lot of other people had a great experience that didn't have as many bugs as me. But you can see in that experience where they're going. Like they will eventually get there, and we will have a Christmas Carol performed in this mind-blowingly complex way. The reason I wanted to call out Skits and Giggles and why I started there is they were using Horizon Worlds today and they made all of their jokes. It was a variety show done in VR. Their jokes leaned into all of the failures or all the limitations of the Horizon platform. So they had like several jokes about how they didn't have legs, and they all those jokes worked because it leaned into just the awkwardness of the platform. So, just I guess it's just one of those things there I wanted to call out, Kyle. Like live theater is one of these the very cutting edge of VR but it's not there yet. Most of those live performances aren't great, and Skits and Giggles was very good.
So that anecdote really pushes the concept of the right word is trajectory. Like, where is it going to go? I mean, if you consider the fact that we're only one really solid battery tech breakthrough away from not caring about battery life anymore. Once your VR headset can last 20 plus hours on a battery, and I know that's far out, but it's possible. It's going to happen eventually. And then you bandwidth, the ability to push high amounts of data to your headset wirelessly will also improve the capability. So it's all about trajectory. Something as complicated and complex and broken as doing cloud rendered VR live skit, blah, blah, blah. That'll all be child's play, in a couple years. So we're not that far away from being able to see this stuff done well and correctly. I mean, even this show right here, we're in VR. I'm sitting in my office, and Ian's sitting in his, and so we're interspersing photos, as you can see here. This is a Gear VR that intended to hold a Galaxy S6, I believe it was. And there we have it, me being about as nerdy as I could possibly be. Now, there's another photo that goes along with this one, Ian. Another picture of me in a Gear VR. And if you want to throw that up on there, I think I have the same shirt on. This was New Year's Day 2015? I guess it had to have been. Is that what year did this come out? October?
I think it came out in the end of 2014. It was
Yeah,
when
it was
the Innovator
October,
Edition launched.
like 14th or 17th. I know, because I went out and got you know what? No, this is the Note 4. This is the Galaxy Note 4. Samsung. I went out and got that phone the moment it came out, and I had the headset right away, and I went bowling using the pass-through. Scored a 125, so, not my best bowling day, but not my worst. But yes, I bowled using pass-through. It worked. I got a lot of looks. There's video out there of me doing it. It was a lot of fun, but see, again, another one of those situations where we were constantly trying to push the boundaries of what was possible in VR before other people were as well. Artful, I want Star Trek Bridge Crew back. That's a game I don't understand why. I kind of do. It was a very watered down Star Trek experience, in my opinion. It would have been better off not being Star Trek themed. Actually, one of the best Star Trek experiences I've ever had was walking around a VR chat duplicate of, I think it was Enterprise C or D or something like that. Fantastic. Way better than what Bridge Crew offered. But yeah. What else do we have, Ian? If there's, so this is actually this is CV1. This picture was taken at a Seattle VR meetup, and there was quite a number of them there. This was actually a few days before it released. I'm not really sure how. I think this ended up in a developer's hand, and they're like, "Yeah, you can take a picture of it." What else do we have, Ian, as we go through memory lane here of different headsets? I found it odd. I couldn't find a picture of me wearing the Oculus Go, with as high as I was on how wonderful that headset was. I couldn't find a picture of me wearing it.
Is this your fedora? Is that a fedora here? Oh
that is my fedora that I used to sport.
Gosh.
Yeah, I used to wear that.
Did you burn it?
No, I still have it. Actually, my kids wear it. Yeah, I don't know. Kids, kids are weird. But no, I still have that head as well.
I've got the same. I've got the same Gear VR photo with the lenses off as you do. And I always felt awkward taking that picture because, like, let's show how it doesn't work without the VR.
You're right. Yeah.
Without the VR inside of it. I think it's interesting to take that walk down memory lane. I could pull up the Bridge Crew image, but I like this one in particular because it shows you can see the CV1 sensor here, and people are talking about Bridge Crew out there. There's this promotional image from 2016 period where they had a different member of Star Trek's crews from the different crews over the years all come in together and play Bridge Crew, and they set it up on the floor with must have been 10 of these sensors set up
Yeah,
for
yeah.
two for each of the people in VR, and
Hmm.
they're all able to get into the headset. And just ridiculous in retrospect thinking about, like, every additional wire that you hook up to your headset is like having your addressable market. It's like every additional setup step is just reducing how many people are actually going to get into this
Well,
experience.
I used to have four set up in my old office when this was the way you did it. It was you just had to have as many sensors as you could. Ian, as we reminisce here and we go through all the, oh, go ahead and push that one up. That was pretty good. Um, as you can see, there was no limit to the amount of headsets that I had access to. I'm wearing a HoloLens 1, and then above that is the CV1 along with the Gear VR, and then the HTC Vive. Um, Ian, we're talking about 10 years of Oculus, and obviously it's gone. It's out. There's no Oculus, no mo. Do we have enough reminiscence? Do we have enough ability to, if we wanted to put together, like, does Upload do like a documentary of the first 10 years of the reporting and the community of VR? Do you think that we have enough that we could produce some sort of documentary like that?
Hmm. It's an interesting idea. I'd have to think of the format. You've got this image of you. I think I remember this super. Was this the
The
supercast where he was just walking by the room?
Ubercast. It was
He
the
was just walking by the
Ubercast.
room and he sat down
Mm-hmm.
with you guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a fantastic interview. It's right after. It is right after Facebook bought Oculus. This was at the SVVR Expo #1 in was that 2014, I guess. Yeah, so long ago, but yeah, he wandered in, had a great conversation with him. It's really, I find myself going back and looking through and seeing the evolution of how everything went from beginning to end. Well, not end, but from to this point. And there are quite a number of stories, and I mean, developers that we've lost, developers that are still out there trying to build their giant, awesome game. There's a lot of characters, a lot of interesting anecdotes. I mean, I have video of Palmer trying the Project Morpheus, which ended up being the PSVR for the first time. First video of him trying it for the first time at this. Actually, I think it was the exact same day, because I think he's wearing that shirt. But I mean, there's just so many stories to tell, and just for posterity or entertainment or whatever, people want to go back and see the history of things. There's a lot. There's a lot. I think that we could get some decent interviews and intermix it with some content here.
Well, it's interesting the different ways to approach it, right? There's multiple ways to go at it, and um, I think a lot about the personalities and the people involved in this, right? People are what interest me personally. Like, I'm interested in the decisions that people made and the reasons they made those decisions and how those decisions affected other people. And what I found in, I don't know, a decade of reporting about VR is that those decisions and how they get made, people argue and disagree over the reasoning for the decision, who actually made the decision, right? You get inside of a giant corporate structure and you get situations where the decision has been made by the organization, more or less, right? Like it's just not in the organization's best interest to do a specific thing. You could argue Gear VR, Oculus Go, those headsets just weren't in the right direction. So who do you attribute, killing those products or not continuing those product lines to? Who was the final person that said let's not do that? I'm thinking about the death of that Meta startup that had a pass-through AR experience. It was Meta before
Yeah.
Meta, and I interviewed the CEO of that company after it was dead, and he blamed his company dying on the like a trade war, basically, that he couldn't get more funding for his startup. And just one small example there of just someone not wanting to own the decisions that were made or the mistakes that were made, and the way those affected lots of other lives. And so I don't know how you can focus. The reason I focus on all that is we've had a changing of the guard. Palmer Luckey is now at Anduril working on his defense company. John Carmack is now at Keen Technologies working on AGI, artificial general intelligence. He wants to make a robot that's smarter than a human in every single respect. Brendan Reeve, go down the list of everyone that was involved in Oculus is gone. The earliest person that I can think of that's involved in VR at Oculus who is still at Meta is Jason Rubin. And I think I'm going to throw out that name here just because I think there's a chance he could be one of Meta's secret weapons. We've
Wait,
talked
what?
about this.
What? So, wait, Jason Rubin, he's been there since day one, or
No, I want to say he joined 2014 time frame-ish. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and check his LinkedIn. But no, he wasn't one of the founding members, but he was there fairly early on, and he's kept inside, been in part of this. Well, Michael Abrash is still there doing research for the research teams. Those are very early members of this Oculus team that are still there. The reason I would argue Rubin might be a secret weapon is we've talked about it before, but Meta has acquired 8 gaming studios, and not one of them has announced a new game since getting acquired.
mm,
And as Heaney and I have talked about week in and week out, it's a very good likelihood that they're all targeting Quest 3 hardware for their next gen software. So you have some of the most experienced talent, most experienced developers in virtual reality, all working on next generation hardware, very likely. And I would be willing to wager a small amount of money that Jason Rubin is part of structuring Meta as an organization to motivate those teams to succeed where other development teams like the game development teams that were acquired over at Google, they all failed. All their projects got canceled, and now Google's moved in an entirely different direction. Uh, can Meta go and actually produce quality games under their corporate infrastructure is a really big open question. And I think it's going to take an industry veteran like Jason Rubin to sort out making sure those teams actually deliver on what everyone expects them to deliver. Um,
you know,
Greg's
you
asking, where did Abrash come from? So, very, very key moment in Oculus history. In 2014, I want to say it was January, there was a report on Reddit. Someone spotted Mark Zuckerberg in an elevator heading to Oculus's offices. Everyone on Reddit didn't believe it. It got buried into the sands of time. And then, of course, I want to say 2 months later, it was Facebook acquired Oculus. During that same period, from initially visiting and seeing what Oculus had shown to actually formally announcing the acquisition, somewhere in that period, they got some of the movers and shakers who were working on VR at Valve to jump ship, to go from Valve to Oculus, and then become part of the Oculus acquisition by Facebook. Uh, Michael Abrash, he's one of the most. He would his recap of this event, of how this happened, would be one of the most interesting interviews and stories to get out of VR, because he's given a few inklings of what happened. Like one of the Oculus Connects, he said he walked into a glass door because he was so lost in thought over the discussions this period. But I think what they essentially did was Abrash convinced Zuckerberg that it was going to take tens of billions of dollars of investment to build out the core fundamental technologies to see VR out over the time span of 10 to 20 years. And Valve wasn't structured for that kind of investment, just wasn't built to make that kind of hardcore research investment. So he left Valve and went to Oculus, and they built up those research teams.
Carmack actually recruited Abrash. They met at I think it was a Thai restaurant in Redmond, Washington. They had lunch together, and Carmack convinced Abrash to come and work with him on Oculus stuff. This is the story that I had heard.
That's a story you've heard. Yeah, I'd love to confirm those stories firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, the timing of a lot of these things. What was so remarkable, if you go back into the timeline and my first interviews, my first demo of Oculus, of an Oculus dev kit or whatever you want to call it, was in, I think, a version of Doom. I think I saw a version of Doom running, or some kind of sample environment I saw in that first headset. But if I go back and listen to the recording, like, they didn't want me to talk about specifically what I saw in that first demo, because they didn't necessarily have it all ironed out, that Carmack could contribute in that sort of way to what Oculus was doing at the time. So you have this situation where Carmack promoted Palmer Luckey's work at E3. You know, he brought out Luckey's headset with his modifications and said, "This is Palmer Luckey's device. He's done an incredible job. Go check out the Oculus Kickstarter." And then Carmack and Newell, Carmack, Newell, and all these other people provided videos that were sent in for the Kickstarter, but they weren't formally part of this Oculus effort for years. And Carmack was behind the scenes for a large portion of this, because he was still technically working at id on id products, and the head of id was very willing to sue people. So you had years there where a person was like not officially part of the team, and then officially part of the team, called CTO, but didn't actually have any direct reports under him. He was working on his own thing in his own area. But eventually, it was like adding, I joked that it was something like adding Infinity Stones, where you added Carmack and you added Abrash, you added Luckey, and then you had this gauntlet that you could do anything you wanted. And that was almost what it felt like Zuckerberg had acquired around that 2014 timeframe. He bought this dream team, and they all worked for years.
Are you telling me that he has to kill the vision in order to destroy half the world?
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
you started it. You did this.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's wonderful. You take it to its extreme there, and it actually fits perfectly well. No, that's the changing of the guard here. The changing of the time is these people are not directly involved in Oculus anymore. They're doing different things, and that's why it becomes very interesting to think about what are Andrew Bosworth's and Mark Zuckerberg's contributions to where we are with VR in 2022 and going into 2023. How much credit does Zuckerberg get for spending that many billions on VR and not listening to a single other soul about how they shouldn't be spending that money.
Well, I mean, our livelihoods depend on it at this point. The fact that all of this stuff occurred the way it did. I mean, we were always told, I don't know how true this is, but I was always told that without the Facebook money, CV1 would have been DK2. And if that had been the case, would that have been acceptable? And where would we be now? And so the amount of kerfuffle created by Facebook buying Oculus. Was it bad? Was it good? Did it do positive things? Did it do negative things? It did things. I can tell you that much. It did things. And so who's to say where we would have gone and what we would have had? Remember, input is hard. Remember that? Input is hard. We heard that for like 2 years, that input is hard. And then here we are doing, hand tracking and all sorts of stuff. And I can Vogue, and, it's ridiculous. So things get better over time, and you just kind of have to stick with it and watch it's funny, I'm talking about how awesome everything is, and then Ian just disappears on me. So I guess it's just my show now. Yeah, I really wonder sometimes if how differently things would have gone if Oculus had been, there's a weird alternate reality where things would have stayed on a trajectory, a different trajectory, but who knows? I don't know. Yeah, Ian ran out of power. Oh no. All right. Well, I guess it's just me then. It's Onikazi. It's always been your show, Kyle. It's my show. No. To be perfectly honest, though, there's been a lot of really amazing stuff that's happened in the last couple years. The last decade has been a serious. It's been a roller coaster, a ride. It's great having such an amazing audience, and the community is. I remember when the Oculus subreddit was just, it was 1,000 people. Then it was 10,000 people, and now it's like I don't even know. And now it's like, do we even call it the Oculus community anymore? Things are changed. Things are different. Let's see if there's any other comments here. Did you guys seriously pick What the Bat is Game of the Year, Funky Sloth? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that part of the conversation from earlier in the show. Let's see here. Plugging into the highest output USB port as possible before Kyle says too many dad jokes. Oh, that's Ian talking. Oh, Ian. Are you going to be able to make it back in just enough time to sign off? I guess I'll keep talking. Feel free to ask some questions. Let's see. Ryan Mallon says, bro, I wish Quest would tell you when the battery is getting low, like 30%. The challenge with the battery really is not just about how much battery you have left, but how much are you consuming? You turn the graphics up to 11, your battery's going to die pretty quickly. We're an hour and a half into being in the studio, and I'm on my Quest Pro, which was just on the dock, and so I don't know. I have no concept how much battery I have left. There's. I almost feel like I want to go back and discuss further about What the Bat. It's graphics does not make a game. Playability makes a game, and this is my opinion. The ability to have a wide audience of people play a game. I mean, when the guy who made Flappy Bird, who knew? Like, nobody thought that Flappy Bird would be as big of a sensation as it became. I mean, it's like the pet rock. It's like Furby. It's like, it goes into that category of it came out of nowhere, surprised everyone, and then poof, it was gone. I mean, there's clones and stuff, but it's just, I don't know. Gorilla Tag, was popular for a reason. You know why? Because it wasn't a shooter. It was something other than that. It had a social, every time you logged in, it was something different. It was a ridiculous mechanic that was so much fun. I had seen other games do that before, but I'd never seen it done that way. Gorillas just in general, always remember Harambe, Harambe strong. Uh, you know, Right, Rubik's Cube, Tickle Me Elmo. These are things where you're like, why is this? Why is this a thing? But it becomes one. It's a fad. I guess that's what it is. But fads can push things. I mean, Tamagotchi. I'm starting to see that Tamagotchi's making a comeback, and I'm like, why? Why do you want to give yourself a little digital responsibility? I have real kids. I don't need fake ones. But it's not for me. It's for other people. And then there's nostalgia and all that stuff. I don't know. Onikazi, yes, you do now have to pour one out for Harambe. Flappy Bird VR Game of the Year 2023. Clayman, I mean, hey, do we have that? I mean, isn't that kind of what Beat Saber is? Yeah, Sexy
Oh my
Bicycle.
gosh.
Got my girlfriend a Tamagotchi for Christmas. See, and fidget cubes, fidget spinners.
I leave
Fidget
you.
spinners.
I leave you alone for
Oh,
5
hi,
minutes,
Ian.
and you bring up Harambe. Oh my
I did.
gosh.
I'm sorry. I'm in Cincinnati. I was just at the zoo and I just visited Harambe's old home. Harambe Strong. Yeah, but fidget
I don't.
spinners, fidget cubes, yeah. Those are the things that for some reason you talk to 99% of the world, they have no idea why it's popular, but yet it is. Yet it is. And I look around and I see people everywhere with fidget spinners and fidget things. And actually, my kids, for a while there during the quarantine, it was like those little poppy, like pop, 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 in all different shapes. Like we had one, it was Grogu, it was Baby Yoda. And it was like pop, 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 pop. And I mean, and I find myself sitting here, I'm watching Jeopardy one night, just kind of hanging out with a beer. And I look down, I'm like, oh, pop, 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 pop. I mean, I get it, kind of, for like 10 seconds. Look, we're getting, yeah, see, look.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, let's respond to this comment here. Thank you for asking a couple times, Anthony. Are there plans to expand Upload Studio with a live VR audience or opening the app to other users for their own shows? Very interesting ideas there. We're thinking about it, right, Kyle?
Yes.
We've got to be real strategic in how we expand and move on from our current setup. But we are thinking about all of those possibilities, right, Kyle?
So I will say that in 2023, there are several cool, awesome things that are going to happen with Upload, and we're that is something that's on the list. So having a live audience in an Upload VR studio is a thing that we would like to do. So it's definitely on our radar, and but it won't be first of the year. There's other things that are a little bit more pressing. If you haven't noticed already, we hired another staff writer, Henry Stockdale, doing a fantastic job for us. And he's in the UK, so it kind of fills in that gap of time. So we always have somebody kind of watching, manning the emails in case breaking news happens. So give Henry a warm welcome if you haven't already. But yeah, I mean, we do want to have a live studio audience, and that way you can watch when I'm talking, and all of a sudden Ian just goes boop, and he's gone, and then hurries up and scrambles for a plug, and then comes back in. Which I'm impressed, honestly. That was pretty quick.
I was staring at my battery going down. You can see it in the corner. I don't know why it isn't on yours, but it's
Yeah, I
it's
don't
on
have
mine.
that. I don't have that.
I don't know. But I was watching it go down one after another, and it got down to 3%. I unplugged it and plugged in another USB to try to see if that was higher input, and it immediately went from 3% down to 0% and died. And then I'd been staring out the corner, out from under the headset the entire time, looking at like another USB cord over on the other side of the room, thinking, can I get that USB over here without everyone at home seeing me scramble across the room? So yeah, I'm back up to 8%, building back up my battery now. Yeah, a lot of people talking about the different ways to do the show live, and ways to have the audience interaction work over time. And honestly, those live shows that I've been to in VR have been figuring into some of my thinking there, Kyle, because it is really cool to have even this format of the show, and then have a handful of people that could actually come into a live show.
Mm-hmm.
People have been listening. I do want to say, people are pondering. I'm seeing it more and more in our comments, because we have been harping on the membership idea for it's got to be 6 months or a year now, where we've just been suggesting, please become a member. We are going to try to build up a membership program that is more meaningful than we have currently. and I think that's going to be a big thing. We want to, I'm very much in love with the idea of people becoming Upload VR members, supporting us directly with a subscription that they pay to support our work as journalists. I know a lot of people out there are doing similar sort of work to support their weekly newsletters or their regular newsletters, and there's a lot more we can do with that kind of feedback loop with our audience, where obviously when we see your comments in a different color here on YouTube, we know that you're supporting us. We know that your question is valuable, and we want to respond to it and get to it as often as we can. So that is something we're going to work on big early next year.
Yeah, no, we are working on some sponsorship options, ad-free options on the site. Dune Dame, I probably didn't pronounce her name correctly. Where's my Upload VR coffee mug? I have 2 of them. And you can get them on our store, which the storefront is awful, and I apologize for that. But that's something that we're working on is, having merch, having abilities to support us in different ways. So it's coming. It's all coming. It's all on. I have a chalkboard over here on the wall, and oh no, I just wiped it off. Okay, well I'll rewrite it. We've got ideas and things that we're working on that are going to be executed after the first of the year, and so those are all. And I love the fact that the audience is asking these questions, Ian, because it means that the things that we are planning are going to be received properly, and we'll
try
still
not to screw it
have.
up.
Yeah, no, I mean we'll try, no promises, but yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, the membership thing is such a big thing to me, right? Because if you aren't involved in media, you don't realize this is happening. But when you have an ad-supported business, you get motivated by what drives the most number of ad impressions. And for oh wow, 20, no, 15 years now, I've poked fun at the way my employers have shifted my content priorities based on those needs. Like I worked for, before Upload, I was at the Orange County Register, and they came to us with quotas for how many impressions you should have as an author attached to your byline. And all of the journalists realized this trick where you could make a slideshow instead of an article, or you could do your article as a slideshow. And the way they had the site rigged up was every time you clicked next on the slide, the ads would refresh in the corners of the screen, and you could get ad impressions by just you could basically boost your numbers
yeah.
25 to 1 just by putting out a single slideshow versus one high interest article. And
Mm-hmm.
I watched an entire newsroom of people, myself included, switch around all their coverage plans because you could put out a slideshow with just ridiculous jokey slides and a caption, and it would get 25 times more views than your actual hard news article. And that was years of journalism at that organization just morphed by the need for ad revenue. And
But Ian, number 12 will shock you. Okay, number 12, you have to go through the whole slideshow to get to number 12 will shock you.
This is why you support journalists. This is why you become members. And please, in the new year, when we make those requests, please consider joining us and supporting us so that we can have that direct relationship and not need to think about advertisers.
Yeah, and know that we are an ad-driven company, and I mean we constantly are talking, and just so you guys know, we're talking constantly about the balance of the user experience. I know our UI is not fantastic right now. That is something that is high priority for us, and will change in 2023, I assure you. But the amount of ads and the way that they show up, I mean, it's the cost of doing business, but it's also the way to pay for doing business. And so I try not to let too many ads come on, but it's a reasonable amount for the type of thing that we're offering. And some people say, man, I'd really love to have an ad-free experience, and I'd pay a couple bucks a month to have that. Okay, we can set that up, and that's kind of what we're doing. And so when Ian talks about the subscription based type of thing, it's not going to be a necessity. You can still look at the ads and pay us that way. But if you want an ad free experience, that's something that's coming down the pipeline. Along with that are newsletters and swag and all sorts of cool stuff. Maybe a tote bag. People like tote bags.
James saying just don't do the slideshow thing. Yeah, I am in this job. I picked this job to avoid and run away from the slideshow thing as quickly as I could. But support journalists, subscribe to journalists, support journalists so that they don't have to do the slideshow thing. Because it's still out there.
And I won't ask you.
I did a speech to journalists in journalism class where I said, this is the state of newsrooms in this decade. Good luck. Because it's ugly.
Yeah, and I won't talk to you about impressions, because I don't expect Ian to be able to do any impression. Do you do any impressions? Can you do any? I want to hear an impression.
I thought you were talking about website impressions.
No, I want to hear an impression. I want to hear. Do you do any celebrity impressions? Let's do a celebrity impression. No.
Okay. I just mess up accents when I do it. I'll try to do British, and it'll actually be like a completely different continent.
Yeah, yeah. Don Knotts. Onikazi says that your Don Knotts is pretty epic. I'd pay to hear Ian do a Don Knotts impression.
Oh my gosh, no, I can't. Oh,
no.
Wow.
No, I do. For some reason, I can do Jim Henson. So Kermit the Frog and Ernie and characters like that. I can do a pretty good Kermit the Frog. I won't. No,
I was told I'm gonna go for, what was it? Carl Sagan. That's my overall.
Yes. There you go.
That's my model in my head. Somewhere in between that and Spock are the overall vibe I'm going for.
So you're picking people with like really vibrant, outgoing personalities.
Fascinating. Yeah, fascinating personalities. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I take this stuff seriously. That's the thing. Like Kyle, I like your you're always willing to joke and come back to the joke part of this, but at the end of the day, I do believe this technology is gonna fundamentally like change what it means to live in this century, right? It's gonna change work, play, relationships, how everybody gets things done, and it's one of those things that's hard for me to, at least sometimes, take it too lightly. Like, you'll get a joke out of me, get me laughing, but other times I just think about all the people who may be forced into VR headsets when they don't want to. I think that is something that's going to happen down the line eventually.
I want to share this quick anecdote. Went to a grocery store, a little mom and pop shop, and just this past weekend, and I walk in and I go to pay for my wares, and I take my credit card and I go to tap it down on the machine, and the man behind the desk, who is 30 years my senior, he says, "Oh, sorry, we're not up to the 20th century yet." And I didn't have the heart to tell him, you mean the 21st century. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go that way with him. And I'm like, well, this is, it amused me just the same way as all this other technology. I mean, I am always the one to go and make the quick joke, as Ian says. When you watch this show and it's Ian and it's David Heaney, it's a very different tone because their goal is to journalistic stuff. And I know, right? I want to entertain because I'm amused. This technology, it amuses me. The concept of what this technology allows the human species to do and to transcend and all of this stuff, it amuses me. that this is all happening and that I get to be this part of it. And so, yes, it's all very important, and the hard reporting and the seriousness of it is necessary, but we also have to remember it's just amusing to watch the human condition evolve and change and become something better than it once was. And that's my angle on it. If you're not having a good time with it, what's the point, right? We're sitting here talking about the argument between a space game versus an infant elephant made out of blocks and bats for hands. I mean, who gets to do that for a living, Ian?
Well,
Come on.
it's funny. Like, all right, there's a lot of directions I could go off, but like, oh, I hate to be the Debbie Downer in the room where it's like, people, VR's first uses are military training, right? People are, learning how to be more efficient with their very serious jobs in VR at one end of the spectrum. And then we had that news story going around a couple weeks ago where a kid is facing crimes as an adult for actions they partook in order to acquire one of these headsets. Those are serious things to think about at the same time that it is what the bat is the experience people at home are getting their hands on, right? It's the most ridiculous, mind-numbing thing imaginable. But at the end of the day, I saw it in our comments, someone, you could take your job at Walmart and have to go through your training for your job at Walmart using a VR headset. Does VR mean the same thing to you as an employee using VR for your job that it means to the people who are just, playing around in What the Bat? The stories that get me about VR going in on an annual basis now, we're seeing it happen all the time and in larger numbers. People who are taking this headset and then using it to lose tens or even hundreds of pounds. So they've been failed by all the existing ways to lose weight. The gym is maybe a scary thing to go to. Maybe there's a lot of judgment there that you don't want to encounter. You can actually go out and work out in VR and change your life in a really, really fundamental way just by applying a lot of focused effort and enjoying the fun of VR in that really great way. Um, it's yeah, as silly as we get and as silly as VR is 90% of the time, there's still that undercurrent of bad things happening because of VR headsets all the time, and it always keeps me from getting too silly with it.
Well, like I always say, if it makes people mad, if it gets people riled up, if people are arguing and debating about it, they must be doing something right. The internet's dead. The internet by 2005, the internet will be a thing of the past. It won't have any impact on the human experience at all. And that was said by a Nobel Prize winning genius. By 2005, the internet, gone. Well, not every genius is right about everything all of the time. And as serious or as fun or as amusing or as whatever, it's here to stay. The VR is definitely the next medium, the final medium. Who the heck knows? I mean, AR is going to put something on top of something else, and if you call it XR, and is VR the same? And 2023 is going to be a trip. It is going to be an absolute trip to see all the different things that are going to happen in 2023. And at the end of the year next year, Ian and I are going to be, wow, remember that show we did at the end of the year? It's like, this is, who knew that this is where we were going to, nobody thought that we would be here. Nobody is going to be able to predict what's going to happen in 2023. I mean, maybe Apple will throw their hat in the ring, or their headset into the ring, I guess. Who knows? Yeah, maybe monkeys attached to Neuralink will be playing gorilla tag. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Oh man, that was one of the harder things to get through this year, where they we Heaney and I went there and stood with a Neuralink representative and asked them as many questions as we possibly could at one of our conferences, and had them walk through the process of how they train these monkeys to operate a game. So like they had trained monkeys to play Pong using only their brain input to control the paddle in Pong, and I had to have them walk me through the step one after another because it's just not immediately obvious how it actually works. Where like at first they're holding on to a button that gives them food when they do the right thing, and then eventually they're just telling the paddle what to do and not actually moving a joystick or anything, and learning that way. That same learning process can be used to train a person who's completely locked in to their body, no way to communicate whatsoever. You could be trained to interact with an electrode, with a computer in between you and other people. You could learn to command neuron by neuron straight out to other people after being completely locked in. And there's papers out there this year describing that exact functionality. And what I'm describing, that whole process, is creepy as hell to the average reader out there. Like when you really try to wrap your brain around how that works, of like what it would be like to be completely locked in and then taught how to interact with a computer intermediary, it's scary for a lot of people out there. But it's something that's going to happen, to your point, Kyle, more and more and more each year going forward. It's going to happen in larger and larger numbers, and I don't think people are really ready for just for everyone that gets freaked out about a neural implant. There's 10 more people who are going to regain some level of communication that they didn't have before because of that new capability. And it's we're going to have to constantly balance both of those views, right? Like a lot of mainstream journalists out there are getting a lot of criticism for kind of having an always negative take on how technology is going to affect their lives, whereas I think at Upload we're going to have to balance out all of those things. So, what are the positive and potentially negative effects of everything?
I'm just going to say right now that I will not volunteer as the representative from the team at Upload to go have Neuralink installed. I will not be doing that. But I will gladly play Gorilla Tag against the monkeys. So I'm just going to say I'll do that. There was a question here I want to approach without causing any problems here. Let's see here. The question was, what Gillest Grant wants to know, what is your expectations on the PlayStation VR 2? My expectations on the PlayStation VR 2 is that the people who love PlayStation VR 2 will continue to love PlayStation VR 2. And its success will rely solely on its ability to provide games that are not available on the platforms that Meta or HTC or anybody else is offering. So as soon as PlayStation VR 2 has a game that somebody can go, man, they'll never get this on Quest 2, but it's on Steam, so I can play it on my Quest 2 tethered. I mean, there has to be something so exclusive and so amazing to draw more people in than the people who are already saying it's awesome without having tried it. Does that make sense, Ian?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's really hard to imagine too many experiences being that way because of just the amount of people that are available on Quest 2. Like Sony would have to go to a developer and pay them enough to not port their game onto Quest 2 eventually, that it covers that loss. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't I don't think there's a lot of games that are going to fit in that category. So I think we're going to be back in this period of maybe multi-year or year-long exclusivity periods, right? The rules always get really tricky where they say we're exclusive to, like, they know that they're gonna get criticized if they say they're exclusive to a platform, so they try not to say they're exclusive, or if they do, they try to, like, be vague about it. But we are gonna have this situation where a lot of stuff could maybe hit PSVR first, but it will eventually hit the other platforms just because they can't kind of avoid it at this point.
Okay, Ian. So we've got to, I could hang out for a couple more minutes before my battery. Oh, there it is. Hey, I have battery 21%. All right. So, really quickly, I'm going to make an absurd prediction. This is absurd, meaning that there's no way in the world that it will ever happen. And it is the kind of thing that would literally have people pulling their hair out and going, oh my gosh, what is happening to this industry? Apple teams up with Nintendo to come out with a VR headset that plays all the exclusive IP from Nintendo, but it's powered by Apple. Ian, would that make your head explode?
Oh, it would, and it goes to some of the things I've been suggesting for a long time now, that Quest is so far out on its own in terms of a standalone VR platform that I think competitors need to come up with unexpected partnerships in order to compete. You kind of laid it out, and it's one of the things that Heaney and I disagree with constantly. It's a joke that we disagree on the likelihood that PSVR 2 will be, at least in some official capacity, playable on a PC. I think that there's reason for that to happen, and Heaney does not.
Oh, I don't think
Um,
that'll. I think it'll happen. I just don't think it'll happen officially.
yeah, okay, so sure, I totally get that, but you talk about something like Half-Life Alyx, right? And you said it yourself. It's totally playable on your Quest, wirelessly or wired. Depends, it's totally up to you how you arrange that system. But that game is playable on your Quest. The list of things that you can't do with a Quest is very, very slim. You're absolutely right. I just don't know where you get the content that is only going to run on a PSVR system. That gives huge reasons to only get that system. Like the
Yeah.
fact that it spans two types of platforms with this headset is just a huge seller.
Yeah, it's fun to throw out ridiculous things like that. Obviously, everybody's going, "Oh, that would never happen." Neither Nintendo nor Apple ever do blah 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 blah. Correct. That's correct. But if I had told you 10 years ago, just to bring it back to the whole 10 years of Oculus thing, if I told you 10 years ago that we would all be talking about what Facebook is doing to drive VR as an industry, you would have looked at me like I was smoking the good stuff. I don't know, man. That it just stranger things have happened, and I don't want to. I'm not suggesting that this is happening, and if it does, I will go buy lottery tickets because that is absurd. But I don't know. It's just kind of fun to things
Well,
like that.
so I'll give this other example. Virtual reality developed by Tenderclaws was a wildly cool experience in its early years. Its ability to, like, take off a mask and warp between worlds was such a cool idea. Then they launched VVR2, Virtual Reality 2, and when it hit, it was a bug-filled mess. It was just tons and tons of bugs right there at launch. They went and fixed a lot of them. They also did The Tempest as well as The Underpresents, and they were these really, really cool live theater experiences done in VR. And prior to the skits and giggles thing that I was talking about liking so much in Horizon Worlds, that was probably my favorite theatrical experience. The Tempest, getting to experience this hundreds of years old story performed by a person in VR, sort of running their whole show all on their own, was really, 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 really cool. They're teamed up to build a Stranger Things VR experience for Netflix. And the thing that gets me about that is, yeah, they had this problematic launch with VR2, but all of the ideas that are there that they've already executed on in those games from Tender Claws could be used with the Stranger Things property to incredible effect. Like there's just it feels like a match made in heaven. It feels just so awesome to have that developer teamed up with that property. And I talked about it previously, I think it was on Twitter or the show, but there's a line in Stranger Things where the spoiler alert for anyone out there who hasn't seen season 4, where the guy says he saw all sorts of miraculous, wondrous things while becoming an explorer of other realms. I can imagine Tender Claws doing amazing things with that premise, taking it to an incredible place. Um, I'm only throwing that out there because it feels like it's a developer and a property that are getting paired up to do something amazing. They could fail, it could be a bad game, it could have problems, but we're starting to see a matchup between developer and idea that could really, really, really work. And taking it back to what Kyle was saying a few minutes ago, where I the first 10 years of VR, we saw Facebook throw money at a lot of developers. And some of the developers did amazing things with that money, and some of the developers did absolutely forgettable things with that money. And I don't know, Asgard's Wrath, that's one of the studios that Meta actually acquired, and now they're doing things for Meta exclusively with that intellectual property. Um, Insomniac went and got acquired by PlayStation, right? Even though they had done some really cool, interesting VR experiences. Then there's other things that I'm thinking of, like Medal of Honor, right? Medal of Honor came out and just disappeared from the landscape really, really quickly. And as this organization that reviewed these things year in and year out, we noticed there was this trend of like big developers learning how to build for VR doesn't always work, right? You're requiring all these people to go back to the basics, and at the end of their product, they just waste a lot of people's time because it didn't have that hook in the first 2 minutes to really get you into the experience. Whereas you've got companies like Cloudhead, they went from the gallery, which was this mist-like experience, to Pistol Whip, where you pick it up and in 2 minutes you get addicted to it and into the experience in a really, really satisfying way. What I'm getting at here is in the next 2 to 3 years, I want more examples of very, very experienced and well-established VR developers getting paired up with properties that let them explore some of the things they did with their first games in much bigger ways. And I think we could see some amazing things in the next 2 years with that.
Yeah, and it's pronounced pistol whip.
Oh my gosh.
Whip. Didn't you
Oh.
watch the showcase? Come on. All right. So my battery is gonna go away. And so I think we should probably wrap this episode up.
How did we get to 2 hours, Kyle? Wow. All right. Well,
just by having a good conversation. I mean, what can I say? I mean, we're both, we could just talk for hours and hours and hours. Maybe one day, Ian, you and I will do a 24-hour in VR conversation. 24 hours.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. Like if we had a little
Yeah.
if we had a little ticker up top that shows how much money we were making, we did it as like a telethon, maybe I could do it. And if I could be allowed to close my eyes for long stretches of
Yeah.
time, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Do
But
you, people watching you sleep in VR? That's not creepy.
it's
Just want to, Anthony wants to kick Kyle off the show. So I agree. I don't know why they let him on this show. Kyle is just a disruption and needs to go away. So
Yeah.
All right, close this down.
Guy says he'd tune into the 24-hour sleeping in VR chat. Yeah, we joke about this and about our different tones. Kyle, I would love to see you do that commentating show next year. Do you think that's going to happen?
So yeah, I have to like reach down here because I have a cable attached to my headset right here. So if I'm not like crunched over. Yes. So we're talking about Alex in Skiva of Between Realities fame and also Upload Correspondence, and I have talked about doing a little bit more irreverent and commentary style show. Let Ian and David Heaney do the news, and the rest of us can go and.
So here's my only question: Can I crash your show in really ridiculous ways, and can I lock you out of our show if you do that? Can we?
That
Can we put it,
so
so
keep
that you
in
don't
mind.
descend from the ceiling?
So yes, you can come and visit sometimes, and we can give you weekend visitation rights or something.
I just want to come out through the wall and like make a silly comment and then disappear on the wall, and then I'm gone with no explanation.
Okay, all right.
But I don't want you to do the same thing in here.
Well, see, that's the thing. This show today wouldn't be going on if I was banned from this show, then we wouldn't be doing this episode right here. So, but yes, Ian, we'll have a little Ian box, and then you can pop in, and then make a snarky comment, and then pop out. We'll have a button that we push, a little Ian button that you put. Oh, not my hand's tight. An Ian button.
We did it, Kyle. We killed Heaney's timer. We went over the 2-hour mark, and his timer dies at the 2-hour mark.
That's awesome. That's not a bug. That's a feature.
Yep. Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I think we'll close this down. We've done our duty for the year. I'm going to just rattle off all the things that I got to recommend: big screen, virtual desktop, walkabout mini golf, 11 table tennis,
real VR fishing, golf
real
plus.
VR fishing. Those are all amazing things. Yeah, go get into those things. You'll have a
Number
good time.
Number one game. Go play that. Tell your friends. Tell your friends. What the bat? It's the best game out there in VR right now. Period. Go play it.
All right. We'll see y'all next week. Got CS coming up. Heaney will be back as soon as possible. I don't think he'll be back in time for next week's episode, but I'm not really sure. Yeah. Thank you to Veil VR for sponsoring us. Thank you for our YouTube members. Thank you all for sticking out with our show and continuing with us. And we will all see you in the future.
Bye.